Okay, so we're going to cover Spawn Undead. Now, Spawn Undead was another spin-off series that came out in the late 1990s that really focused on Spawn trying to be that perfect balance between heaven and hell. See, around this time in the early days of Spawn comics, heaven and hell were going out of their way to collect souls for their big war against one another. But while you have Spawn being stuck in the middle of that, he then discovered a third party, and that would be Mother Nature. See, when it came to Mother Nature, it wanted to make sure that heaven nor hell is able to win the war, but to also make sure the war never happens at all. Because if the war does, well, the entire world could most likely be destroyed, and so would the human race. And so it came to Mother Nature to recruit Spawn and say, it's up to you to prevent that war from actually happening. And so when it came to Spawn Undead, you see Spawn going around and finding different people who are being affected by both heaven and hell in some kind of way to help build up their armies. And so each book is really more of a one-shot, where Spawn focusing on one person at a time to make sure they're not being used. So for example, we pick up with a character known as Tom Sloan. Now Tom is going to die at the end of this chapter, but he is the perfect example of what Spawn is trying to do. So when we pick up with Tom, we kind of find out that he is an alcoholic. And matter of fact, he's about to commit suicide. Now, before he is able to jump off the bridge, well, that is when he is confronted by a mysterious character. Now, when it comes to our mysterious character, he tries his best to talk Tom out of the idea of jumping off the bridge by saying that, listen, you may think that as soon as you hit the water, you are going to die, but there is a possibility that you're not going to die so instantly. That matter of fact, you're going to suffer and then you are going to die. And that is a whole lot worse going down that route. Now, when it comes to our mysterious character, he wants to know why Tom is trying to commit suicide by saying, listen, tell me your story. And once you do that, I'll give you my peace of mind about your life and see if I agree with what you are trying to do here. But once we are able to exchange words, I'll just leave you alone and let you decide what is actually the right thing to do. Now, this is really more of us kind of seeing why Tom believes that committing suicide is the right move to take here, because we do learn that he grew up in a broken home. His mom and dad were constantly arguing with one another to the point where his dad had just left or his mom walked away from his father and took him and his little sister. But his mom was not really trying to be a parent. Matter of fact, she felt like she lost a lot of time by being with Tom's father. So she was always out with other men. And that led Tom to take care of his younger sister, except he was very abusive to her. But the thing was, no matter how abusive he was to his sister, she was always there in his corner. Always there to pick him up when he fell down. And even though when he became a great soccer player at his high school and she was always there cheering for him, he didn't care much for her because he only wanted two people there, his mom and his dad, the two people who were never around. Now, after he finished high school, he went to college. Now, it seems to me he was able to receive a scholarship, but unfortunately, he ruined his knee. So there goes soccer. There goes, his scholarship. But then he got into drinking. And that was where his downfall began, because he always kept drinking nonstop. And around that age, you truly believe that you could do no wrong, that nobody can stop you. And so even though his drinking got worse and he also got arrested 6 times, he didn't stop. And it kept going and going as he got older and older, to the point where his apartments will look so nasty because of all the different bottles just laying around in his apartment. But his sister was always there for him, trying to help him up, to help him get back out in the world and try a new beginning in his life. But it wasn't working until one big moment. See, his family stepped in. They had an intervention for him to say, hey man, listen, your drinking is getting out of control. But you have mom, dad, and other family members there, except one person, his sister. And the question was, well, okay, where was your sister then? For somebody who was always in your corner, where was she at that meeting? We kind of find out that later on in his life, he lost his sister because of a drunk driver. Now, when it came to his sister's funeral, he went to it, but it wasn't like, okay, he's going there because he feels so bad about what happened to his sister. He lost the one person who really did care for him his entire life. No, he just went there to be there as a supporting, member of the family. But as soon as the funeral ended, he went back home to have another drink. And that was his breaking point right there, realizing that he did not truly care for his family at all anymore, only for alcohol, especially when it came to his sister, somebody who cared for him so much. But when we jump back over to the present day, we did have our mysterious character realize what's going on with Tom by saying, oh, you're trying to commit suicide to see your sister in the afterlife, but you don't believe in God. So wait a second here. If you think that God is not real, but heaven is, how does that work? Because no God, there's no heaven. Now he also says the reason why you feel so alone because you turn your back on God. God is always there for you. Jesus is always there for you. And you have our mysterious character saying, listen, man, I was just like you 1,000 times before my past, but every single time Jesus was there to help me back up. Now, at first, it may seem like, okay, our mysterious guy here is just some religious person talking about God and Jesus so much. But in reality, he's an angel, because he was talking about how he watched his brother fall, Lucifer, how Lucifer fell out of heaven and went straight down to earth into hell. And so you had this guy saying, after seeing my brother go away, I felt lost, but Jesus was there to help me. And I want to tell you that Jesus and God will always be there for you as well. And matter of fact, you have our angel here kind of reveal a small piece of him to Tom to say, I'm an angel. Now you believe that God is real. And he gets in his car and he drives away. And it seems like, okay, this is a great moment because now Tom is not going to commit suicide. But then Spawn appears. Now, when Spawn appears, we have to remember that his main goal is to make sure that heaven and hell do not go to war at all. But he also has another goal, and that goal is to help to make sure that humans have their free will. That right there, because he realized that humans no longer have that, because heaven and hell are trying their best to build up their armies, that people of earth no longer have their free will. Look at Tom, because Tom already chose a path. He was going to commit suicide and go to hell. But then the angel appeared and said, hey man, don't do that, and try to put Tom on a different path, the path that leads into heaven. And so when it comes to Spawn, he says, that was not right. That was wrong. You were being controlled. You lost your free will. And I'm here to restore that for you, to give it back to you, to let you choose your path. And so when it comes to Tom, once you have Spawn do that for Tom, Tom then changes his mind and commits suicide. And that's Spawn saying, hey, even though he died, at least he was able to die on his terms, not hell nor heaven. He still had his free will. Now, when we jump into the second issue, we pick up with another character, and this is his story. And this is Travis Ward, another character we're only going to see one time, but another perfect example of what Spawn is trying to do. Now, when it comes to Travis, we do learn that he was a very successful magician, but that success did not come so easily. Well, it did, but not in the good way, because he made a deal with a certain demon. Now, we do see him arriving at a random diner, and before he goes inside, well, he sees Spawn. Now, when he turns around, Spawn is not there, and that tells us that this is Spawn's next target. But you have Travis go inside. Now, when Travis goes inside, we kind of find out that he arrived at a restaurant to have dinner with a character known as Sheila. Now, when it comes to Sheila, apparently it's been 15 years since they last saw each other, and apparently these two characters used to date for a short period of time, but she was very happy to hear that he had called out to talk to her, except when he gets there, it's not him trying to flirt and take her home or anything. It's really more of he's telling her he messed up because he made a deal with a demon. And she remembers that back in college, he would dabble into different kinds of demonic things. And so when she hears him say, I possibly made a deal with a demon, she's kind of wondering, one, is this a prank? Or two, have you been continuing doing demonic things ever since college? And we kind of find out that Travis made a deal with a demon known as Hakel Dama. And I really hope I pronounced that name correctly. Now, when it comes to Hakel Dama, he was a lower level demon that was trying to move his way up. And so he was really down with the idea of taking Travis' soul. But here's the thing, because usually when you do give up your soul to a demon, they have to give you something in return. And so Travis says, one, I just want some resources to be able to have a successful life, but two, I want the knowledge on how to avoid my damnation to make sure I stay alive as long as I want to. If you can agree on those terms right there, you can then have my soul. Now, the demon realized what Travis is trying to do is trying to get one over on him, which no matter what, the demons will always get your soul at the end. But either way, you have Hakel Dama agree with Travis and saying, listen, when your time is up, a certain character wearing red and black will come to you and grab you and take you down to hell. And those beings are called hell spawns. And so when it came to Travis, he's beginning to freak out in the present day because right before he walked into that building, he saw Spawn, and he thinks that his time is up. And he tells Sheila that this was not the first night that he has seen Spawn. Matter of fact, he says, I think I've been seeing Spawn for a while, or Spawn has been watching me for a while. By saying that occasionally I will feel like somebody is watching me. When I turn around, no one's there. Or I believe I saw something in the corner of my eye. When I turn around, nothing is there. And so for Travis, he's saying, I feel like my time is up, or my time is coming very soon, because Spawn is here. I'm seeing him here and there around me, but he's not making a move. Now, he also tells Sheila that once he first saw Spawn and realized that Spawn is a real thing, he began to do studies on different hell spawns over time. And the idea that different people at different point in time have recorded that they have seen a hell spawn, and those hell spawns have done different things to different people in different cities around the world. But you also have him say that he's trying to learn how they hide. And he realized that they're able to change their appearance, that they could be anywhere right now. They could be you or the waiter or that person in the front door. They could be anywhere just watching you in disguise, getting ready to take you away. Now, when it comes to Travis, he goes back to Hakel Dama and demands to know how to avoid Spawn, how to avoid his damnation for the time being, how to avoid the gate that would take him to hell. Except you have Hakel Dama say, listen, dude, I cannot share that information because I don't know that information. We only made a deal. These hell spawns, their goal is to bring you over to us when it comes time for you to go to hell. So unfortunately, only they know where your gate is at. And once they get you right where they need you, that is when you'll lead straight over to hell when you die. But Sheila, she had enough. She's tired of hearing this crazy story about hell spawns and demonic beings and souls being used to make a deal. She said, you know what? Go home. I'll call you a taxi, go home, sober up, and when you are in a better state of mind, maybe, just maybe, we can try this again. And so you do have Travis get inside that taxi. It begins to drive off, except we then see Sheila change into Spawn. And the entire night, Sheila was never there. It was Spawn pretending to be her. Now, this is where I'm kind of confused of what was Spawn's end goal here, because it seems like Travis really had no choice. He was going to hell. His free will was already taken away because he made that deal with the demon. But either way, that taxi is taking him to hell because the driver is not a regular driver. And so that's the end for Travis. Now, the next character we're going to talk about is Eve Wiley. Now, when it comes to Eve, her problem is that she's unable to sleep. She constantly wakes up, the battle with insomnia. And so after a while, each night, she goes ahead and gets up, goes to her couch in her den, our living room, and watches TV until her eyelids just hurt so much that she can't even keep them open. But we kind of find out that there is a possibility that her sleeping problem is not insomnia. It has to do with her grandmother, the soul of her grandmother. But this is not only affecting Eve, it's also affecting her husband, David. Matter of fact, you have David calling up his mother and telling his mother, Mom, I can't do this anymore. Like she has completely changed into somebody else. Somebody that I don't even recognize anymore. And apparently when they got married, it wasn't this bad, but it only gotten worse to the point where she constantly insults him every single day, to the point where she's begging him to change, hoping that it will make things better for her. But in reality, their main problem has to do with the soul of her grandmother. Now, here's the thing. We do get the chance to learn about the grandmother, and we kind of find out that Eve's grandmother would constantly beat her when she was growing up as a child because her mom and dad, they just left the girls behind with the grandmother, which she honestly hated so much. But on top of that, anytime Eve did something like wet the bed or not finish her food or something else, her grandmother would beat her. She was a very hateful woman to the point where all that hatred went into her granddaughters, into Eve. And so now Eve is slowly turning into her grandmother, something that she does not want to become. But outside of Eve's home, we see Spawn watching over her. Now, when it comes to Spawn, he still wants to make sure that humans have the ability of free will. But of course, we already know that something's going on when it comes to Eve with the idea of her grandmother still being inside the house, the spirit of her grandmother. And so this could be a hell thing trying to take her soul to hell. And so when it comes to Spawn, he's trying to make sure that neither heaven or hell can play their games when it comes to Eve trying to choose her own path. Now, Spawn is confronted by an angel who tells him what you are doing is completely wrong because one, you cannot stop the war from actually coming. No matter what, heaven and hell are gonna battle, and when it does, you'll be there in the middle of it and you will most likely be killed off with the rest of the people who are trying to stop the war. But at the same time, you have no right to take souls away from heaven nor hell. And matter of fact, God is getting very upset. So I pray that God give mercy to your soul. But for Spawn, he does not care what the angel has to say, because he realized that both sides are just pure evil, really, because they're just using humans for their own personal gain. And so Spawn walks away, ignoring what the angel is trying to tell him. Getting back over to Eve, we see that Eve and her husband relationship is only getting worse as time goes on, because no matter where she goes, she's constantly reminded of her grandmother. They are constantly getting to argument because Eve is beginning to change. Her behavior is getting worse and worse, and David can no longer take it. And he tells her, like, listen, you have to fix this because I want my wife back, not this person that she had become. And he walks out of the diner that they were at, where they had their argument at. But later on that night, you didn't have Spawn stop by to tell Eve that she has to let go, because she is the reason why the soul of her grandmother is still on this plane, because all the burden that Eve is holding on to. If she wants to be free, she has to let go of all the pain that she has kept inside that was given to her by her grandmother, but also kind of understand why her grandmother was the way she was back then. Because again, all that burden she's holding on to is the reason why her grandmother is here. But once those words are told to Eve by Spawn in her sleep, she finally has a peaceful night where she's able to sleep for once. And it's great because the next day you have David and Eve go over to the grave of her grandmother, where she says goodbye, but she's also saying, maybe I realized that even though it seemed to me that you were a hateful person, that you were probably afraid of something, and the fear you had inside of you was the reason why it turned you into a hateful person. But either way, it's Eve letting go. And once she's able to let go, you did have her grandmother's spirit beginning to let go of this plane, where you didn't have Spawn walk over to the ghost of her grandmother to walk the ghost into the next step of the afterlife, heaven or hell. And so this could be really more of Spawn making sure that hell does not win when it comes to Eve, but to also make sure that this spirit finally moves on before it has the ability to drag Eve down into hell. Now, the fourth chapter really does focus more on religion, because originally, when it came to religion, the main goal was to unite people as one, bring everyone together. But over the years, you began to see different variations of different kinds of religions popping up around the world, to the point where it began to divide people. Now, the only thing we all have in common is that we all believe in the idea that there is a higher plane of existence. It's just that for each person, that higher plane is different. And so when it comes to this chapter, it's going to focus on a character known as Sung Sung Blue. See, Sung Sung Blue was a man who realized that a new religion can pop up so easily almost anywhere in the world. And so with that, he was able to create a new one and had a few people begin to believe in what he was saying. Now, this religion is really more based around the idea of space gods who are going to come down and help out the human race. But getting back over to Sung Sung Blue, he was able to spread his word around the world, and more people began to believe in him, that he was some messiah sent down by some space god who was going to help us out down the road. Now, to become one of his disciples, you have to, give over a huge chunk of money. And that's the main thing about this whole entire thing. It's a scam, because he realized that he can make so much money off people who are going to believe in what he is actually saying. Now, here comes his problem though, because you have disciples of his church begin to say they're all seeing the same person popping up left and right, and that would be Spawn. Now to them, they're not calling him Spawn. They're calling him some man in red and black. And for Sung Sung Blue, he begins to freak out because he kind of realized things are getting a tad bit weird. All his disciples that he had tricked into his church are all now talking about the same person and wondering what in the world is going on. Now he is able to play it off saying that, oh, it must be a sign from our space god, and that means sooner or later things are going to change and this is really great. But in reality, it's Spawn trying to destroy this whole entire scam that Sung Sung Blue is putting on. Now we kind of find out that when it comes to Sung Sung Blue and his church, the only reason why it was able to flourish is because of angels helping out, pulling off different kinds of miracles or tricking people to get involved into his church. Except now these angels are beginning to freak out because they realize that Spawn is onto them, that this is another move being done by the forces of heaven to try to recruit souls on their side for the big war. And so you had these three angels wondering, what can they do to actually stop Spawn here? Because Spawn is now about to ruin their whole entire scheme. But then different miracles began to happen around the church. Now, at first, you would believe that these different miracles are being done by Spawn to kind of give people the ability to have free will. But these miracles are being done by the angels, which shows why Spawn is very upset with the church, because the entire church was being controlled by Sung Sung Blue. But the reason why he's been so successful is because of the angels. And so these people don't have free will. They're being controlled by the angels. And so while you have all these different miracles happening, Spawn appears. And you have Spawn tell Song, like, dude, being played by angels. Like, all these different kind of miracles, your success was all being done by angels. And that's not okay at all. And so now I have to step in and make sure that things are perfectly balanced. And so you have our two characters begin to work. But then we jump back over to the three angels, and they're getting very upset now knowing that Spawn is ruining their whole entire scheme. It's falling apart. Now, the reason why I want to focus on this section is because it really shows that Spawn is the first Hellspawn to possibly go on a different path than most Hellspawns have done in the past. And so now you have the three angels wondering what to do here, because one of them wants to go after Spawn and actually kill him, but the other two, they're kind of scared, especially one with the idea of him taking a new road, a road that no other Hellspawns have ever taken before. He's different. Why is he different? And what could he possibly do to them down the road if they were to face him? But then we jump over to the following day, and this is going to be huge because you then have Song appear in front of his church and tells his church that he is no longer going to be the reverend for the space god church. Instead, he's trying to bring in a new church, the idea of the Church of Spawn. Now, he does not say, oh, this is the Church of Spawn and let's begin to praise him. No, but he is wearing an outfit that looks just like Spawn's outfit. Not just like it, but you know, different parts does look very similar to Spawn's outfit. But either way, he began to say it's time for us to take the next step into our evolution, to break out of our chains that bound us to Earth. And so he begins to pass out drinks. Now all these drinks, they have been spiked, which means they're all going to die together in this church. But this is really Song having his own free will. He's no longer being controlled by angels. All the different miracles, all his success is no longer in their hands. This part right here is all him. And so even though he's killing off other people and bringing them down with him, at least they're all going down on their own free will. And so they all drink the drink and they all die together in that church. And that's the end of the 4th chapter of the series, and this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.